Marvel Rivals Season 2.5 is here, and with it, the meta is shifting fast. Maybe you're still getting shredded by a top tier Iron Man. Maybe for whatever reason you can't deal with Moon Knights or annoying Namors. Now don't worry, I've got the counters, strats, and team picks to shut them down hard. In this video, I'll break down how to counter every single hero in the game, who to pick, what to avoid, and how to flip even the toughest matchups in your favor. And do me a favor, if you're new here or find yourself coming back on the regular and you aren't already subscribed yet, why not? It's completely free and you're coming back anyways. We're going for 20,000 subscribers, so you might as well join the pond. But anyways, I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy this relatively long video. But anyways, diving straight into our first category, we have none other than Doctor Strange. Now, believe it or not, Doctor Strange is one of the most powerful tanks in the entire game, but he's far from invincible. A lot of players are giving him too much respect and losing to him for free when in reality, there are clear ways to punish him, so let's break it down. Now, one of the first things when it comes to countering a character like Doctor Strange is that his shield is not infinite. So because of that, you can actually exploit it. Unlike Magneto, who can absorb infinite damage with his barrier, Doctor Strange has a limit. So it's absolutely worth it to poke it during the neutral, and if you don't know what the neutral is, it's kind of like the stalemate fight angle. Now, constant pressure can force him to retreat, play more passively, or blow cooldowns early. Characters like Punisher, especially with the new buff of Season 2.5, can really tear through that shield and force him off into off angles in team fights. This makes a huge difference, especially if you're trying to land an ultimate like Hela's or another Doctor Strange's ultimate. Now, most of the time, if you're playing into a Doctor Strange as Hela, he'll just fly up and deny your entire ultimate. But if you're already broken the shield, he has no way to counter it, so poke his shield early, force it down, and set up your DPS to land uncontested ultimate abilities. Now, one of Doctor Strange's most crucial abilities is his flight. This ability is on a 15-second cooldown, and once it's used, he has way more vulnerability. Think about characters like Groot. If you know Doctor Strange's flight is down, it's the perfect time to wall him off or isolate him. Even better, track how he pairs fights with his ultimate. A lot of Doctor Strange players will fly into your team and try to dump their ultimate from above. If you know the cooldown is down or coming, you can preemptively or punish it immediately. Now let's talk about Doctor Strange's ultimate ability, Eye of Agamotto. It's a really game-changing ultimate that can shift the fight in your way very easily. Now, believe it or not, you can actually easily shut it down. Think of Invisible Woman can push him out of the range the moment he floats up, which is super beneficial to everybody. Winter Soldier can save his hook in the second he goes for the ultimate. All you have to do is hook him, or any other character with some type of stun ability. Whether that's Lunar Snow Freeze, Emma Frost is grab, Mantis is sleep, and so on. But do keep in mind, the second you use this stunning ability on him and it cancels the ult, his ultimate will retain a 50% charge. So if you deny the ultimate one fight, he's more than likely going to have it for the next one. Now following that comes one of his most important tools is Doctor Strange's portal. This is a game changer for contesting objectives. Just because you cleared the enemy team doesn't mean you've secured the payload, capped the point. Strange and his team can portal back and touch with ease. Now too many players lose fights they should win because they stack 5 players on the card and get wiped by a surprise ult or a dive. Now what you should do is if you're close to capping or hitting a checkpoint and you know Doctor Strange is alive, either spread out, take high ground, or control off angles. Or if you have the time, you could send one of your teammates with some sort of crowd control ability, whether it's stun, freeze, and so on, and try to hit that Doctor Strange with some type of displacement so it would stop the TP happening. So if you skipped all of that, here's a quick little summary of how to counter Doctor Strange this season. The first is poke his shield early and often, force cooldowns, don't let him play passive and safe. You always want to know when he has his flight or trap his flight. It's a huge part of his mobility in a combo setup. Then you always want to be ready for his ultimate, Eye of Agamotto. It's usually telegraphed, so don't blow your cooldowns randomly, save them to cancel or survive it. Finally, watch the portal. If you think you've won the point, you haven't until you accounted for Doctor Strange, so play smart, spread out, and punish the patterns. Strange is strong, but if you know what to look for, he's absolutely beatable. Now, if I can just take 1 minute of your time to talk about today's sponsor, Control. And I'm excited to share that this video is sponsored by Control, a delicious protein-packed snack or just a tasty way to fuel your day. Control has you covered. And personally, I'm all about their peanut butter pieces cookies. Seriously, they taste amazing and they fit perfectly into my daily routine. Whether it's a quick shake in the morning or a protein-packed snack in the afternoon, Control's products are both macro-friendly and ridiculously tasty. And now they've got 2 new must-try products. First off is their Monster Cookie, a soft-baked protein cookie loaded with white and milk chocolate chips plus crushed cookie pieces, and it tastes ridiculously amazing. And if you're more of a protein shake friend, they have a paradise ice potion shake. It's a refreshing mix of sweet coconut and tart pineapple blended into and it's honestly fantastic. Now, Control's snacks and shakes are designed to fuel active lifestyles, whether you're hitting the gym, gaming for hours, or just need a convenient, nutritious option. If you're looking for your next go-to protein shake, check out Control's website using the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. And don't forget, use code DUCK at checkout to save 10% on order. But anyways, back to the video. Now we come to Hulk, and in the right hands, Hulk can look like the best character in the entire game. First and foremost, Hulk is a dive-style disruptor. He jumps in, slams, draws aggro, then looks to disengage and reset. Your goal shouldn't always be to eliminate him unless he overextends, of course. Instead, focus on pressuring him the moment he engages. Poke him down while you're in the stalemate fight to try to get him back into Bruce form. You also want to burn his cooldowns to force him out. Once he engages, quickly switch focus to his backline or objective. He's not useful when his abilities are down. Make that downtime count. Treat him like you would any other dive character, don't let him cycle for free. Hopefully by now you know that one of the best ways to counter Hulk is using crowd control abilities, or CC for short. Things like stuns, freezes, displacement, pushes, anything that is a major factor to shutting down this character and shutting down his movement. Now let's quickly talk about one of Hulk's major abilities, and that's none other than Exile. Exile is one of the biggest playmaking tools and one of the most punishing mechanics in the game if you're not ready for it. It can cancel key ultimates, yes it is painful, it can pick off out of position teammates and swing fights in an instant. It often sets up full team collapse if your team isn't quick to respond. So how do we deal with Hulk's Exile? What are the tips we need to know? If Hulk has Exile, be extra cautious about your positioning before ulting. You will get it cancelled if you're not paying attention. If a teammate gets exiled even slightly out of position, react fast by either using a Magneto bubble, healing them, pushing forward to create space, or applying pressure to stop the enemy team from collapsing. The worst thing you can do is retreat while they are stranded and watch them get deleted the moment the exile ends. Now besides the counter strategy, there's some actual characters you can pick. High mobility characters like Star-Lord and Psylocke can kite him endlessly. Massive burst damage characters like Punisher or even Winter Soldier can chunk him out fast. Following that, hard crowd control characters like, again, Winter Soldier with his bionic hook, Luna Snow with freeze, Mantis with sleep, tons of CC abilities. Now yes, a good Hulk can outplay bad cooldown usage, but you should be forcing him to play well, not letting him dominate by default. The more obstacles you throw at him, the less of an annoyance he's going to be. Moving down the list, we have one of, if not still one of the strongest Vanguards in all of Season 2.5 currently. Magneto has high damage output, powerful bubbles, utility both appealing and enabling, and versatility across team comps. Whether supporting dive heroes or double shield tanks like Venom or Thing, or even Ember Frost, he's honestly a difficult tank to truly ignore. If you're not respecting his cooldowns, especially his ultimate, you're going to get punished hard. So how do you deal with Magneto? Well, first and foremost, you have to respect his ultimate. If Magneto has his ultimate ready, you need to treat it like a raid boss mechanic, especially if you're a shield tank or play a hero with projectile-based abilities. If you're playing a tank with barrier like Doctor Strange, Hulk, or even a mirror Magneto, position yourself near your team so you can quickly shield them as they group when he pops it. Also, try to bait Magneto into committing his ultimate early or ineffectively. If you can get it telegraphed and wasted if you're coordinated. Remember, the more charge Magneto has in his ultimate, the more damage he's going to be doing. Try to make him use it early. Also, don't ult into him blindly. If you're playing someone like a Punisher, Magneto has his ultimate available, do not pop your ult without protection, whether that's Magneto bubble or any other type of shield or rune from Loki. He will quite literally absorb it and throw it right back into your face. Now, some of the big direct counters to be looking out for is the Thing. He can easily pierce through Magneto's bubbles and shields, so that is something to consider. Emma Frost can almost do the same exact thing with her Carbon Crush in Diamond form, so that is something to consider as well. Characters with displacement abilities can also be a hard counter. Whether it's Thor, Invisible Woman, you could even throw some other displacement heroes in there as well, but for the most part, Emma Frost is going to be your biggest direct counter right now. Now we have Thor. When it comes to contesting isolated DPS, especially flankers, he's great at diving backlines, disrupting squishies, and holding angles with pressure. Thor is a relatively easy character to counter. Believe it or not, he's public enemy number 1 most of the time. Now, one of the biggest counters to Thor has to be Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier can hook him, displace him, and just deal a ton of damage to shred him down. Emma Frost is also a great counter at displacing and disrupting Thor, whether it's Carbon Crush into a kick into the wall, or just passively shredding him down from a little bit of a distance. That 18 meters is nice now. For the most part, the whole point of countering Thor is crowd control abilities. That is the best way to shut down Thor. Whether it's stun, freezes, sleeps, grabs, hooks, throws, anything. Moving down the list, we come to Groot, and he's still probably one of the most or strongest tank in the game currently in Season 2.5, even though they slightly nerfed him, still a super solid, super strong tank. Now, Groot is so strong because he can easily contain a lot of space, he can easily block off healing for enemy teams, and just does a crazy amount of damage. So how do you actually play around Groot in terms of strategy? First, you want to avoid tight spaces where it can easily wall you off. Only commit through chokes where you have an advantage or pressure elsewhere. Otherwise, you're going to give him exactly what he wants. Groot excels in front-to-back team fights, meaning taking out the tanks first, then the duelist, then the strategist. You always want to attack from multiple sides. Go for flanks, things like that, but besides strategy, what are the best way to counter him with certain heroes? Now, of course, at the top of the list has to be Wolverine. Now, besides Wolverine, you have heroes like Winter Soldier who can, in theory, do the same thing as Wolverine, but maybe just a little bit better. A hook in, a knock up, and Groot should get eliminated quickly. Punisher is also up there because he can shred down his walls and shred down Groot in general. Even though infinite ammo was removed, he still does an insane amount of damage to Groot. At the end of the day, the best way to do anything against Groot is to really split pressure and focus on your main counters. Now, moving on, we come to Peni Parker, and Peni Parker received some pretty insane changes for Season 2.5, and that's the main team up with Rocket Raccoon. Now, instead of one spider nest generator she now can place 2 if she has that team up, which I believe makes Peni Parker a lot stronger now, especially on defensive sided maps. But you just have to keep in mind you have to have a rocket on your team to be able to pull this off. So when it comes to countering Peni Parker, the main thing you need to be looking out for is positioning. Peni players sometimes over-focus on traps and angles, which can leave their frontline unsupported. If your tank dives and Penny's too far back setting up tech, it can be an easy punish. And you also have to keep in mind she has a pretty underwhelming ultimate compared to many of the other Vanguards in the game. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's underwhelming in comparison. You have to remember, Peni shines through utility, control, and disruption, not explosive damage or massive tempo swings. If you can survive the trap setups and drag the fight into the open, she loses value quite quickly. The second biggest way to counter Peni is the generators. You need to constantly be keeping your head on a swivel, looking for those generators to completely remove them. Once you remove those generators, a lot of her impact and just ability to do anything is greatly diminished. But I will say, if you're trying to counter her with characters, you could look at heroes like Winter Soldier, Wolverine, and any aerial character, whether that's Iron Man, Human Torch, Storm. And I say Wolverine and Winter Soldier mainly because they can hook or displace the Peni into your own team, making it hard for the Peni Parker to really do anything. Now you might be saying, if the Wolverine goes in and tries to grab the Peni, yes, he can die to the mines, but he does have the undying animal passive or whatever it's called, so he has that second life and he will still grab you. Now moving on to our next hero on the list, we have none other than Captain America. Captain America is deceptively difficult to deal with, especially if your team doesn't have the right tools or the coordination to bring him down. He's slippery, he's survivable, and if left unchecked, he becomes a massive problem. So why exactly is Captain America so strong? Well, first and foremost, Captain is built for sustain. He can stall forever, bouncing around, shielding through pressure, and if he gets low, he dips out, grabs the health back, and comes right back to the fight. Full HP, pretty annoying, right? Now, the first thing you should be thinking about when it comes to Captain America is heavy crowd control abilities. You need a burst against stuns or heavy shots or slows. Whether it's Luna Freeze, Mantis' Sleep, Emma Frost's Carbon Crush, any of these abilities, Winter Soldier's Hook, Knock Up, anything, those are what you need to get rid of him. Now, a big misconception with Captain America is that you're not always supposed to eliminate Captain America. That's the trap, and that's his whole playstyle. Believe it or not, Captain gets insane value when he's only partially focused. Either go all in and burst him fast, or don't waste cooldowns at all if you can't get the Ilium on him. You want to force him out, break his shield, chunk his health, and make him back off. Again, you're not always playing to eliminate him, you're playing to cycle him out. Once he's out of the fight, resetting, congrats, it's now a 5v6 in your favor. He's like a living cooldown sponge. If your team doesn't know how to deal with him, he'll eat your time, pressure, and resources until you're exhausted to actually fight. So either bring the tools to shut him down or play smart. Force him out and don't feed him and fight where he isn't. A Captain America in your team's backline could literally end the fight in a couple of seconds. Whether that's actually getting a pick on one of your strategists players or just making enough chaos so they're not healing the rest of the team, he's doing his job. So that's why you need to turn and shut him down rather quickly. Moving straight down the list, we come to Venom. And he's the undisputed king of dying less, and sometimes dying quite loud. He's a massive hulking presence with an absurd health pool, and because of that, he can feel unkillable, especially if you're not prepared for him. And you might be wondering, why is he so strong? Well, he has the massive advantage of being able to get out of harm's way in a second, with his ability to swing, ability to climb walls, and he can dive away as well. He can shield after taking a lot of damage if need be, and then he can shield for a third time if he uses his ultimates. So first, let's talk about strategy. The key to beating Venom is not letting him overstay for free. This means layered crowd control is essential. Things like I kind of mentioned in my other counter videos and previously mentioned before, is things like freezes, stuns, sleeps, knockbacks, hooks, anything like that, anything that forces him to disengage accurately or to get eliminated trying. But anyways, here are some of the heroes you should be considering. First is Wolverine. Wolverine's passive will absolutely shred through Venom's ginormous health pool. Then we have Peni Parker, another great example of a character who has some interesting crowd control abilities that people need to start using if they're dealing with the Venom or to stay away from any of these dive heroes. And of course, because Venom is a dive character, you could throw in anti-dive heroes if need be, like Namor, Emma Frost, Thing, even Adam Warlock with the Soul Bond ability if you really wanted to, although sometimes it's not the best option. And of course, you could throw in Squirrel Girl, and those are going to be probably some of your better options to dealing with Venom besides just raw strategy. So here's the thing. Literally, the Thing might seem like a hard character counter, but in reality, he actually isn't. Most of the time now in a higher elo, Thing isn't nearly as played as what it used to because Emma Frost exists, unfortunately. But if you find yourself playing against the Thing, here's some things to keep in mind. The first character that really counters Thing is Groot. Groot can wall off his ultimate, and he can wall off his engage, his escape, his Yancey, which is his Yancey Street charge. He can also basically wall off his embattled leap, and it makes Thing pretty much useless in a lot of scenarios. Now, following that, we have Peni Parker is another big problem for him. Her constant spider webs and crowd control shuts the Thing's ability to disengage cleanly, because even though the Thing is quote-unquote immovable, he is still easily webbed by Peni Parker. Now, following that, we have Winter Soldier, otherwise known as Bucky. While his pull effect won't affect the Thing, his hook still stuns, and that alone can be devastating in the middle of a brawl, especially if followed up by burst damage. And of course, you have high burst characters like Punisher, or even Hela if you really wanted to, Hawkeye, and maybe even Star-Lord. Now, when it comes to Emma Frost or the White Queen, this character is rather annoying to counter. When it comes to fighting Emma Frost up close, there are two things to consider. Is she in her diamond form, or is she in her normal form? The best way to deal with Emma Frost is when she's in her normal form and not in diamond form. When she's in her normal form, she's not immune to crowd control abilities, so anything like stuns, sleeps, roots, anything that will displace her and slow her down. So Wolverine can be seen as a counter to Emma Frost, mainly due to the fact that when she's in normal form, she can be grabbed by Wolverine, but if she's in diamond form, there's really no point of the Wolverine really going for anything on her. Because there's not that many direct counters to Emma Frost, a lot of the time you're looking at strategy. Whether it's using heroes like Doctor Strange, Groot, or even Magneto to try to wall or shield off her from using her ultimate ability on your rest of your team, always trying to do the best to try to reduce the effects of her psionic seduction, which is her ultimate ability. Another thing to consider is that when she throws out her crystal to deal damage to you after she shoots it and it breaks, it does extra damage. You can actually walk out of that circle so you don't take the damage from that crystal, but you do have to consider that if you're backing up from that, you're losing a lot of space that your team so desperately needs. But probably the character I find really best at countering Emma Frost has to be Groot. Now that you got a good understanding of how to counter each and every Vanguard and Marvel Rivals, let's now talk about our duelists for Season 2.5. Now diving directly into our duelist section, and I just want to say again, thanks for sticking with me for this rather long video. Starting off, we have none other than Black Panther. Now for Season 2.5, Black Panther didn't really receive any changes, which is a little bit surprising, but not the end of the world. Now, regardless, Black Panther is one of those characters that completely shreds teams when piloted by a skilled player. In the right hands, he can delete a target before you even realize he's there. That's exactly why so many players struggle to deal with him. So because of that, you have to think about his strengths and his playstyle. He has tons of mobility, tons of burst potential, incredible speed, dash resets. All of this makes him annoying to deal with. So how exactly do we counter a character like Black Panther? Now, something to keep in mind or consider consider is that Black Panther strives in chaos. When there's a ton of chaos going on, you're looking at the enemy team's front line, you're calming all over the place, flooding the comms. That's exactly what the BP player is looking for. Everybody is distracted doing their own thing. That's where he has the perfect chance to strike. So one way to counter him with strategy is to reduce this chaos, whether it's keeping your comms clean or having your duelist, vanguard, or strategist constantly ping where the Black Panther is, where he's moving to, and where he's looking to strike. That's one way to keep that Panther on the leash. Maybe you're playing in a quick play match, maybe you're playing in a ranked match and no one's communicating and you don't really know how to control the chaos. So that's when we turn to our hero specific counters. So hands down, probably our best counter has to be Namor. Even though he got slightly changed in season 2.5, he's still super effective at countering a character like Black Panther, especially with the team up with Hulk with the Gamma Squid team up. Very strong, very easy to track where the Black Panther is moving. You can either play Namor one of two ways. The first way is playing as a flanker, and the second way is playing as a anti-dive backline hero, setting up your squids for the backline so that if the enemy dives, well, they'll get shot by the squids and it's an easy turnaround for the rest of your team. Now, another solid hero counter is Winter Soldier, but you do have to land a hook, which can be particularly hard, but if you actually manage to land that difficult skill shot, you should be able to clean up a Black Panther in a second. I say he's a counter because in theory you can hook him and delete him, but it is, again, relatively hard. Then another hero counter has to be Scarlet Witch. You have super easy tracking with Scarlet, doing a ton of damage to Black Panther who's moving around quickly. With the auto tracking, all you have to do is suck him a little bit and he's pretty much falling over. Then I think another sleeper kind of pick is Storm. Storm can do a lot of damage to a Black Panther. The Black Panther isn't really paying attention, especially with her empowered AoE. It definitely does a number on Black Panther. You can even use your wind form with your empowered E to make him slower, which to this day I still believe people don't understand that if you empower your wind, it actually slows enemies inside of that AoE as well. Then we have some other effective picks, which is Mantis with her sleep ability. You can sleep, it's a relatively larger AoE. Then we have Luna Snow with a freeze. Again, it's going to be harder to hit, but it can be done in theory. Then we have Squirrel Girl with a ton of crowd control options, especially with her changes in season 2.5. We have the Thing with his Lancy Street Charge that completely immobilizes Black Panther for a small fraction, so you can easily pick him off if your team is coordinated enough. Then we have characters like Emma Frost who can carbon crush him while he's, trying to dash or escape. We have characters like Adam Warlock who can soul bond if the Black Panther is diving your backline endlessly. Then we have a character like Loki with his regeneration domain where he can survive a dive from a Black Panther, but because the runes are on a relatively long cooldown, it is a gamble. Then we have Cloak and Dagger, and in Cloak's form, you can use the Blinding Cape. You have the ability to escape if necessary, and his primary attack is a auto tracking of the sorts as well. Then I'm going to throw in a little bit of a spin, and it's Rocket. He's extremely resistant to dives because he has a ton of survivability, a ton of mobility. Now, I'm not saying you should necessarily pick him into Black Panther, but it's definitely an option, and you can even throw Ultron now in there as well. Now we come to Black Widow, who might not seem like a strong character at first glance, but she can quickly become a thorn in your side if left unchecked, especially in the hands of a good player with good aim and a Mantis booth, which leads her one-shot squishies. And with the changes made to her team up with Punisher, it's even more of a threat now. So things to consider is you never want to try to trade at long ranges. She's a sniper and a massive threat at distance. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Why challenge a sniper from range with a close range DPS? Hopefully you can answer that yourself. But basically the best ways for strategy is the flanker. Go for aggressive flanks. Widow's shots become significantly harder to hit when under pressure or in close to mid-range combat. Now, closing the gaps is in fact the best option when it comes to playing any type of ranged duelist, but something to keep in mind, she does have the kick and knock up, which can be a little bit annoying. Now, believe it or not, a direct counter is actually Hawkeye, whereas Widow needs precise aim to secure elimination. Now, when it comes to playing against a Black Widow, generally strategy is more important than hard counters. She has close range inconsistency. Her aim is far less reliable in the 10 to 20 meter zone. Now, Widow players often struggle under pressure, especially from flankers. Now, that's not always the case, but generally speaking, Widow players do struggle under pressure. Now, following that, probably one of the best Widow counters out there is Captain America. Constantly in her face, shield up, pressuring her non-stop. That's probably going to be your best hero counter that you can have. Now, moving down the list, we come to Hawkeye. In the hands of someone with exceptional aim, Hawkeye can be a relentless nightmare, constantly poking, constantly applying pressure, and letting sudden game-changing picks. But while he thrives in a neutral, he also becomes very exploitable with many weaknesses. To counter him effectively, you have to learn a little bit about his strengths. Again, Hawkeye excels in extended non-committable fights. This is essentially what we call, and a lot of the other players call, the neutral game. He thrives when the fight isn't progressing. Teams are just poking for ult charge and he has safe, uninterruptible sightlines. These conditions are perfect for Hawkeye to farm a ton of damage and eliminations. Especially with all the changes in Season 2.5, he's definitely a lot stronger now. The number one priority is tanks. Your job is to pressure him. Now, the number one priority is tanks. Your job is to pressure him. Magneto can walk up, take space, and poke him out with his shield and his immense damage. But besides that, one of the biggest counters to dealing with Hawkeye has to be Captain America. Cap can be Hawkeye's worst nightmare. By continuously pressuring him and drawing his attention, it's much harder for Hawkeye to really do anything. If Hawkeye is focused on dealing with Captain America, that means your team isn't receiving those critical headshots, so it's one less thing you have to worry about. When it comes to playing as a duelist or a DPS against an Hawkeye, there are two things. You either duel or die. If you want to duel him, mirror him with a Hawkeye, or pick Hela, maybe Black Widow, or anybody else with solid poke damage. The second option is the most effective one as well, as to dive Hawkeye. Characters like Black Panther, Captain America, Iron Fist, Psylocke, and even Star-Lord, if played super aggressively, excel at diving Hawkeye. Now, typically you should dive as two characters rather than one, but at the end of the day, what is the biggest takeaway when it comes to playing against a Hawkeye? That takeaway is to constantly pressure a Hawkeye's face. It's going to be a lot harder for him to deal out a ton of damage while you have like a Captain America or any of the diving duelists inside of his face. Now let's move on to Hela, the other sniper in this game, and probably hands down one of, if not the best duelist currently in Marvel Rivals still in Season 2.5. She, for whatever reason, got some buffs for Season 2.5. They added 2 more primary shots. I'm not really sure why they did that, but they did. Now, in the right hands, Hela can completely dominate the lobby. Her power is tied directly to how well she's positioned, enabled, and left unchecked. Because of that, there's some pretty easy and clear ways to shut her down. The first thing you want to be looking to do is to deny her setup. Hela wants safe, elevated off angles, positions where she can constantly apply pressure onto your support and backline. So you always call out her position, ping her consistently, and apply pressure to deny her free sightlines. Hela players will either go for cheeky off angles or flanks, so being aware of flank routes and off-angle spots is extremely important. So a big thing to countering Hela is tracking her bird. Her movement and aggression are tied to her crow form. The moment Hela has her Raven/Dash, she'll play more aggressively. When it's down, she's significantly more vulnerable. It's on a 13-second cooldown, so that is something to keep in mind. Another thing is keeping control of her ultimate. Your team can easily get rid of it if you're all focus firing. Following that, Doctor Strange can fly up and try to block it. Magneto can use his ultimate to counter it as well, although it's not the entire duration. You can get a majority of the shots collected by Magneto. Now, when it comes to hero-specific counters, some characters to consider is Hawkeye and Black Widow. They both kind of outrange her and threaten kills before she can really pressure, because in theory you only have to land one headshot with Hawkeye and Black Widow. Of course, the Black Widow's damage boosted to get rid of a Hela. Following that, diving characters can break her spacing. Think about Black Panther. He can overwhelm her health pool. Iron Fist denies her stun and dances around her utility. Psylocke and Captain America apply non-stop pressure and force her into bad positions. Again, I always recommend diving with at least 2 heroes, usually the best way to get rid of a aggressive sniper like a Hela, Black Widow, Hawkeye. Then again, for our vanguards, we have Hulk, Captain America, and Venom. They can shut her down, mainly Captain America, but Hulk and Venom can certainly work as well if all comboed right and together. Now let's talk about Iron Fist. Now, he can be rather slippery, but with the Season 2.5 changes, he's not the hardest to counter anymore. Now, why exactly is Iron Fist so strong? He has high cooldown denial, high uptime, slippery disengage tools, and his ultimate form. Now, one of the best ways to counter Iron Fist is this. When he's in his blocking stance, do not, and I mean do not, shoot at him. For whatever reason, players believe that shooting him when he's blocking is the best counter. You do realize that if you shoot him, he gets shield and does more damage to you, right? Hopefully you know this by now, but when he's blocking, don't shoot. It's as simple as that, and yet people still don't understand. Besides that, you have high burst characters that can easily count him. Think Winter Soldier, Star-Lord. You could throw in Namor there, but he can block to the more shots or the turret, so he does build up that passive and that extra HP. For tanks, we have characters like Emma Frost. You could throw in there if you really wanted to. And of course, we have Loki runes, we have Soul Bond from Adam Warlock, and so on. One of the best ways to really counter him is just ignore him, essentially, until he actually becomes a problem. Then you should start focusing him. The more you're looking at him and chasing, the worse it's going to be for you and your team. Now we move on to Iron Man. Iron Man receives some, I guess, pretty rather drastic changes in season 2.5. The biggest thing is the removal of Gamma. But of course, it's not the end of the world. Iron Man still thrives at close, mid, and long range damage and has a decent ultimate that can shut down a ton of strategist ultimates. Especially with the Ultron team up, he's a little bit more annoying. Now, because he is a flying character, head scan heroes are going to be your best friend against him. Not all supports are helpless here. Adam Warlock is especially strong because he is a hit scan hero with his primary attack, which is this left click. Then you can even throw Ultron in there, mainly due to the fact that he outranges Iron Man most of the time. For tanks, Magneto can absorb Iron Man's ultimate, block damage, and still punish him in the air. Some other counters are Namor. If you place the turrets right, they can chip away at Iron Man, but not the best counter, but is still a potential counter. Then you have Spider-Man, who can chase, stick, and punish him. Then you also have Iron Fist, who gets in his face and forces cooldowns and disrupts his rhythm. Then of course you have your hit scan heroes, again, Hela, Black Widow, Punisher, even Hawkeye if you played it well. Now moving on, we have Magik. Magik is a terrifying brawler and duelist when played well. Her ability to pressure, displace, and shred through backlines makes her an absolute menace. So how do you counter her core playstyle? Magik's biggest strength is also her biggest weakness. She has to be in your face to be rather effective. She's not a poke or zoning character. She needs to get close, land slashers, and combo through portals to secure kills. This means anti-dive or crowd control heavy comps work wonders. Think about Winter Soldier / Bucky, aerial denial, and burst damage make her regret diving. Peni Parker, Spider-Bots, mines, and auto stuns punish her relatively hard. A character like Thing can easily stop her from moving around, and you also have Emma Frost, who can literally just grab her and choke slam her and then kick her into a wall. Following that, how do you deal with her in her ultimate? Well, she does get massive damage, survivability, and a ton of pressure. So your win conditions are massive burst, which is Hela headshots, Hawkeye one-shot, hard crowd control abilities like Mantis' Sleep, Luna's Freeze, and comboed with Focus Fire should be able to instantly get rid of her. Then of course you have Team Discipline, because if just one person tries to handle her slow, you're feeding her a reset. Now Moon Knight is a little bit of an interesting case. He received some love in season 2, but he's not really played. He's not that good, at least in my opinion. Now, how do we beat Moon Knight if you're playing against him? The key is to force him into close range engagements. You need to play characters who won't let him breathe. Stay on top of him and make sure he can't roam freely. Strong tank counters include Captain America, and you could even throw in Thor and Venom as well. Then for our damage dealers, there's a ton of options you can use, like Psylocke, Star-Lord, Spider-Man, Iron Fist, and a lot. Moon Knight doesn't really have the tools to fight back effectively in these high pressure situations. Also, you need to pay close attention to his unks. If you destroy them, you're essentially cutting his damage output into half. Now onto Namor, the king of anti-dive. How do you counter a character that literally counters essentially everybody? So the first thing we need to be talking about is strategy. Destroy the squid turrets. You have to get rid of them. This reduces his control over space and drastically lowers his effectiveness. Following that, you need to bait out his Blessing of the Deep ability, which is the bubble. It's now on a 20-second cooldown with the changes, so it is a pretty massive cooldown to get off. This puts him on a hard rotation, so you can't be immune forever now. Now let's talk about some hero direct counters. First up, we have Winter Soldier. He does well into Namor because he can destroy his squid super easily and match Namor's range for the most part. If Namor tries to get aggressive on an off angle, Bucky can chase him down and tank the return pressure thanks to his high health. Then you have other long range DPS. Think like Hawkeye and Hela. They're serious threats. They can potentially 1-2 tap him or at least force him to retreat before he can fully engage. One caveat though is that Hawkeye doesn't do much damage to the squids. His uncharged shots barely tickle them, so you need to keep that in mind. And if you really wanted to, you could throw Moon Knight in there because he can do a decent amount of damage to the squids and Namor as they all bounce off one another. So those are some things to keep in mind. Now comes the big question. Can you dive Namor? Yes, you can dive Namor, but only if you're coordinated. Before you go to the comments saying you can't dive Namor, he counters everything that dives you. Just hear me out. Solo diving Namor is a nightmare. Yes, it's basically your way to getting back to the respawn screen. But coordinated dives with multi-high mobility heroes can work. Think Venom, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Hulk, all diving together. You have to remember that this strategy is highly team dependent. If even one player isn't on board, the whole thing falls apart. So coordination and communication are everything. Moving on to Psylocke. Psylocke is extremely dangerous in the hands of a skilled player. Her ultimate can wipe out enemies quickly, but there are strategies to mitigate her impact and specific characters who can shut her down. Especially with the changes in Season 2.5, she's getting picked a little bit less, but she is still a very strong hero, don't get me wrong. But if you are looking to counter or you run into an obstacle of a really good Psylocke player, here's some things to consider. Her ultimate is a powerful cleanup tool, but it can be neutralized. Deploy barriers like Doctor Strange's barrier, it can absorb her ult. Drop Namor squids, they can direct and redirect the targeting. In some cases, grouping up as a team can let you survive her ult with coordination. Easier in duos and trios than with random teammates. So let's talk about countering Psylocke directly. Characters with high burst damage are very effective, especially when Psylocke overextends or risks her abilities. You have to remember, Psylocke relies on dashes and quick engages. If she doesn't secure value, she's low on cooldowns and very punishable. Winter Soldier is a strong counter. He punishes her when she's overcommitting. Namor is also a solid counter due to his control and durability. Now moving on, we come to Punisher. Punisher can be an absolute menace in the right hands right now, especially with the buffs that the character received, although he was slightly nerfed because they removed the infinite ammo, so that is a big thing. But again, it's not the end of the world, especially with all the changes they did in fact make to him with his ultimate move speed and just his primary weapon in general. So one big counter that you're probably going to be looking at is Magneto, especially Magneto's ultimate for Punisher's ultimate. It's pretty linear of how you have to counter it. Only that you can play Squirrel Girl to try to break him out of his turret as fast as possible and just do a ton of damage. You could also pick a character like Hawkeye to shred him down from a distance, as well as Hela. All are great one-to-one counters that can definitely wreak havoc on a character like Punisher. Now again, the best way to handle Punisher is patience and timing. Avoid him when he's fighting in the neutral, destroy his turret as quickly as possible, then of course clean him up once he's vulnerable, and that's in theory how you can quickly get rid of Punisher for Season 2.5. Now when it comes to Scarlet Witch, she isn't insane of a character, but she can definitely be annoying in the right team compositions, especially with a Storm Doctor Strange. I've seen that a lot. So what are our counter strategies? What are we looking to get rid of when we're playing against the Scarlet Witch? Well, we're looking for stuns and bursts as they're your best friends. A character like Mantis can be very annoying with a constant sleep, Luna Snow's freeze, and any other forms of crowd control, whether it's Winter Soldier, even Hela, and so on, maybe even more. Remember, don't take extended trades, you want to burst her down. Also, some things to consider is that positioning is key. You want to use walls to block line of sight and avoid her stuns as best as possible. Don't try to tank her damage head on or rely on just outplaying her. Play smart and play safe. She has auto tracking, so you can't really play dive characters or flyers into you, so that's something to be super aware of. Now moving on to Spider-Man. In Season 2.5, he did lose the team up with Venom, so he's a little less picked now, but still a decent character. Now Spider-Man's primary strength lies in his abilities to pull enemies off the map. Catching players off guard, it's vital to always be aware of his presence. If you walk out of spawn without checking for him, you may find yourself in a very unfortunate situation. So for counters and strategies, we're looking at anti-dive characters. We're looking at characters like Winter Soldier, who's a reliable pick who can interrupt his ultimate and stun him during his disengage. Then we have characters like Namor with his team up with Hulk. It's great at shutting him down. Star-Lord, his ultimate auto aims can track him and burst Spider-Man down quickly. Scarlet Witch, her anti-dive control tools keep Spider-Man at bay. Then we have the triple support comp, which overwhelms Spider-Man with healing and crowd control, denying his engagement and forcing a retreat. Then we have Adam Warlock's Soul Bond, we have Loki's regeneration domain abilities, and of course we have characters like The Thing, which can completely immobilize him, and we also have Emma Frost. Moving down the list, we come to Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl can overwhelm players, especially in the hands of a decently skilled player. Her ability to deal significant damage and double stun tanks makes her a battlefield menace, especially with the changes in Season 2.5. Now, a lot of the time, to try to get around her with synergy, vertical positioning is key. Maps like Tokyo favor her due to verticality, so you'll always want to fight her from above. Characters like Hela, Star-Lord can jump rooftops and control high ground. You also have any flying character essentially, like Storm, Human Torch, even Iron Man if played well can be a serious counter. Even Ultron, I'll throw Ultron in there as well. Most of the time when you're playing into Squirrel Girl, it's not necessarily about who you pick, it's about map awareness. You want to avoid small choke points because Squirrel Girl
thrives in those super closed areas. Now moving on, we have Star-Lord. In season 2.5, he did receive a pretty good buff, and I still believe he's a super high tier character, a character that you'll be wanting to play, especially with the res composition. It's still very good in season 2.5, but that's besides the point. So our top counters, we're looking at Namor. It can slow him down while he's doing his spin, and his Hulk Gamma team up with the supercharged squid can really delete a Star-Lord if he's not paying attention. Then of course, one of the biggest counters to the res comp has to be Hela. Hela can easily get rid of a Star-Lord just as quickly as Star-Lord could get rid of the Hela's team. And a Hawkeye with the recent buffs to Hawkeye, just like Hela, can easily get rid of a Star-Lord if he's not paying attention. Then of course, Magneto is a great pick to shut down his ultimate entirely, but the biggest tips to countering Star-Lord is to focus on timing, coordination, and burst damage. You have to be mindful of his mobility and ability to re-engage fights quickly and in position smartly, especially during resurrection fights. He thrives on punishing poor positioning and poor spacing. Now Storm, like all heroes, has key vulnerabilities that can be exploited by the right strategies. One of Storm's main weaknesses is her limited mobility after using her speed boost. If she's not playing from an optimal position, she becomes highly susceptible to burst damage. I know I said that wrong. Don't hurt me. Flying too low or positioning poorly makes her vulnerable to one-shot eliminations. Because of that, and she is a flying character, your strong counters are any of the hit scan characters in this game. Whether it's Punisher, Hela, Star-Lord, Black Widow, you can even throw Hawkeye in there if you really wanted to. Now, if you wanted to counter Storm's ultimate, some things to consider is Rocket Raccoon's new and improved amplifier for Season 2.5. Well, it was changed in Season 2, but Season 2.5. Then you have coordinated team shooting while it's active can eliminate her quickly, and then you have to remember, players tend to feel invincible during her ult, but a focused team could shut it down fast. Also, you could just chuck a Iron Man ult at her as well if you wanted to, which will instantly get rid of her, but those are the things you should be looking out for when you're trying to get rid of her. Moving on, we have Winter Soldier, and he's a polarizing hero. You either love him or hate him. He's powerful but in need of adjustment. So first, he has some weaknesses, and that's outranging him is key. Hela and Hawkeye can poke him from further away and pressure him consistently. Now, yes, he can shoot you from a distance, but he has damage fall off, unlike characters like Hela. Another counter is Magneto. You always want to bubble to block his hooks, cleanse his ult mark, and zoning tools make his life harder for Bucky. You can also stun and poke him in neutral fights. You could also throw the thing in there. He can counter him with careful play, but risk getting shredded if played poorly. Then of course you have Emma Frost, who can just be the most annoying thing in the entire game. And I beg you, please do not play Adam Warlock into Winter Soldier. Now moving on, we have Wolverine. Now he's not as banned as he used to be, but he can still be a complete terror to a lot of the tank players in the game. Now you can play Wolverine into comps that have an Emma Frost, only if the other tank is like a Groot. If it's not a Groot, then there's no real reason to play that character. Now Wolverine again can be good in a lot of scenarios, but there's just so many counters in the game currently that's a little bit harder for him to really do a lot or have a lot of impact. But if you do find yourself playing against a Wolverine, you can pick Emma Frost, use Diamond Form, completely dismantle him. You could use Sting if you wanted to. Other counters are like Magneto, bubbling the person that's getting grabbed, Invisible Woman, pushing and pulling the person that's getting grabbed as well. Then you have characters like Winter Soldier, Squirrel Girl, Namor. These are all counters to Wolverine. It seems like the whole world is against Wolverine currently, but we'll see as time progresses. Mr. Fantastic excels in close range combat and struggles at range. Weaknesses are he's very limited in long range fights, so that is something to consider. So your effective counters are Hela, Hawkeye, Black Widow. They excel at poking him down before he gets too close. Wolverine can also shred through his inflated health pool and gain his passive charge from it. Now let's talk Human Torch for Season 2.5. He received some nerfs, so he isn't as played as what he used to be, but he's still a decent duelist overall. So how do we counter him? Well, you have to still respect his burst damage. If you see him layering fire on the ground, he's likely about to dive with a damage combo. So you want to stay mobile or use defensive cooldowns to mitigate it. Then some strategic advice. Split your team and approach from multiple angles. Gives better sightlines and makes it harder for him to dive the backline cleanly. The more flanking from alternative angles can help pin him down. Then of course we have strong hit scan characters, Psylocke, Star-Lord, Punisher, Hela, Throw in a Hawkeye really in there if you want to. All of these heroes can shoot them out of the air reliably and pressure them during the flight and fight. In theory, that's how you can counter all of the duelists for Marvel Rivals Season 2.5. Now, before we dive into the strategist section with our new hero, Ultron, I just want to quickly say, if you liked the video, make sure to like it, subscribe if you're new. We're going for 20,000 subscribers. But regardless, I can't thank you enough for stopping by, and let's get straight to the strategist. So kicking off our strategist section, we have none other than Adam Warlock. Now, Adam Warlock is still an insane strategist, especially with the res comp, but on his own, he's still very good. One of the best ways to counter Adam Warlock is being aware of his cooldowns. After he uses his soulbond ability, it will be on cooldown for 40 seconds, so that is something to take note of. Following that, another major factor of Adam Warlock's kit is his ultimate ability, Resurrect. The second you hear the Resurrect, if you're playing some type of duelist, you want to immediately figure out where that ability or ultimate is coming from. The faster you get to it, the faster you can punish the enemies that are just getting respawned with super low HP. Besides that, some of the best counters, in my opinion, to Adam Warlock have to be characters like Winter Soldier, mainly for the fact that Winter Soldier can get easy resets with his ultimate on both Adam Warlock and the people he's resurrecting with his ultimate. Another thing to remember is that Adam Warlock doesn't have the best mobility in the game, so you can easily exploit this with fast moving characters. Now again, you don't want to solo dive in Adam Warlock because he has the soul bond ability, so that dive becomes obsolete. If you're trying to dive into Adam Warlock, try to get 2 dive heroes, maybe 3, to really pressure the backline. Now let's move on to Cloak and Dagger. Moving on down the list, we come to Cloak and Dagger. Now they aren't necessarily overwhelming characters that dominate the game in any way, but they do have some tricks up their sleeve. The one being the blinding cape that also makes targets receive more damage, which people don't really understand that it does that. But one of the most effective ways to try to counter Cloak and Dagger is applying pressure to force them into using the Fade ability early. The Fade, or whatever it's called, Dark Teleportation maybe, has 12-second cooldown, which is relatively long, and if you bait it out early in engagement, it can leave Cloak and Dagger much more vulnerable for an extended period. So communicating with your team, letting them know it's on cooldown is a major advantage to you. Now, there's a lot of ways to counter Cloak and Dagger's ultimate. The first is Magneto, of course. Magneto builds up his charge with ultimate and can easily delete a Cloak and Dagger. You can Hawkeye headshot her, you can Mantis and Black Widow headshot her, you can also Iron Man her as well. I mean, all those work and can instantly get rid of a Cloak and Dagger. And that's essentially how you can easily counter them. Now moving on to Jeff. This character can be a little bit annoying to deal with, although he did get recently changed in Season 2.5. The characters that I find the best at dealing with Jeff now is, again, Lunar Snow with her freeze ability, Hawkeye, Storm, even Iron Man are probably some of the best counters you're going to be looking at. You could also throw in a Scarlet Witch and Iron Fist as well. Now moving on to Loki, kind of in a similar way to Adam Warlock, Loki's totems are incredibly powerful, especially because they have a long cooldown. However, if you plan to play dive, engage, or even use your ultimate, it's crucial to bait out his totems, which is his regeneration domains. Other people call them lamps or tranks, whatever you want to call them, but you need to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Once you get rid of them, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with them. Characters that counter Loki are characters like Moon Knight. Yes, Moon Knight does counter Loki, but isn't necessarily always the best pick. Some other great counters are Hela, because you can easily get rid of the clones. Same with Hawkeye, easily get rid of the clones. Black Widow, easily get rid of the clones. Then you think characters like Star-Lord, who can easily get rid of the clones as well, even Iron Man. So moving on to Luna Snow. She is a solid all-around character who doesn't necessarily dominate game on her own, but there are a few key things to keep in mind when playing against her, and several ways to counter her effectively. The first one being watching out for her freeze orb. It can be a dangerous tool, especially because now she gets 50 extra health. The biggest things to be looking out for is Magneto ult, Iron Man ult, and just focus fire when you're ulting as Luna. You can also throw in Hawkeye and Black Widow if they're damage boosted, or Hawkeye just in general to be able to headshot her and she's, out of ult. There's a ton of counters to Luna Snow. You can even punish her ult and focus fire her down, so that is something to remember. Now, Mantis can be an incredibly strong character, especially paired with Adam and maybe even Ultron. Their team up can be devastating, as Mantis can be resurrecting and continued to provide immense value in a fight. Now, because Mantis does damage boost, everything in her kit is a little bit lackluster, besides her sleep, of course. She can be shut down quite easily by a lot of the ultimates in the game, and just by focus firing her down while she's even using her ultimate, it can be pretty bad a lot of the times. But for the most part, you're just picking a character that can easily pick her off as quickly as possible. Whether it's Punisher, Hela, Hawkeye, Black Widow with a damage boost, anything can literally just delete Mantis. So Rocket, the biggest things to keep in mind when you're trying to play against Rocket, in my opinion, every character can counter Rocket. All you have to really do, go behind the enemy's team, break the BRB, first. That's the first thing you should ever do if you're playing a flanker, whether it's Black Panther, again, Psylocke, Namor. Look for his BRB, which is his resurrection beacon. Destroy that, half of the battle is gone. From there, you can cause a ton of chaos, get an early pick, get that resurrection gone, so no teammates can come back on their team. Now, the second biggest thing is Rocket's ultimate, CYA. You need to destroy this as fast as possible. When he pops that, of course, there's a lot of variables, there's a lot of objects to be looking out for, but when he pops this ult, everybody on the team should immediately focus it down. Except for some of your healers. Your healers should probably be healing the rest of your team. But in theory, everybody should be shooting it as fast as they can so it goes completely away. From there, that's really all there is to it. His BRB and his CYA. So his one ability, which is the beacon, and then his ultimate ability, it's pretty easy to destroy. Everyone just needs to shoot it. I can't tell you the amount of times that players leave it on 1 HP or don't shoot it at all, and it gets immense value. The longer it's there, the more value. The less time it's there, no value. That's how you do it. That's literally the best way to counter Rocket as anything. Next up, we have Invisible Woman. Now, Invisible Woman can be an absolute nightmare in the right hands. When played effectively, she excels at disrupting positioning, constantly pulling you out of your comfort zone and into her team's grasp. Now, you do have to be extremely cautious when peeking from high ground. If she pulls you off and there's no easy way to get back, you're easily as good as gone. So how do we counter Invisible Woman? I always recommend marking her with your middle mouse button if you're on mouse and keyboard, or whatever you change the keybind to. Always mark it so that you can easily track her if she's in and out of invis. Always also be looking and listening for footsteps, because you can hear her while she's moving around in invis. Believe it or not, it's a relatively loud footstep noise, so that is something to keep in mind. There's a whole list of characters that you can use to counter. Hela, Hawkeye, Black Widow, pretty much any duelist can counter a strategist, in my opinion, for the most part, except for maybe Wolverine with the push and pull, but that's objective based. But again, Magneto ult, Iron Man ulting, Scarlet ulting instead of Invis ult is also a great way to try to counter her. You just have to be aware of the risks that are coming with it. Now, last but certainly not least, we come to our new hero, Ultron. Now, Ultron is only really good in a 3 strategist setup, but you can get away if you have the Iron Man team up with a Luna Snow. That's the only exception. If you don't have an Iron Man, then you have to have 3 strategists. If not, don't play Ultron. That's literally the best way you can do it, because there's not enough healing for just a duo to really do anything, because Ultron's kind of more of a hybrid than anything. He's there to deal damage and do some healing. That's the biggest portion and part. Now, here's some of the best counters to Ultron. A lot of the hit scan characters, Hela, Hawkeye, Black Widow, the list goes on with all the hit scan characters in the game, all solid counters. There's also solid counters countering Ultron's ultimate, whether it's Magneto's Meteor M. That is a giant counter. He absorbs all the shots, but you do have to throw it relatively quickly. It's kind of like Punisher's ultimate when you're absorbing it as Magneto. It charges up fast, and if you don't throw it, it breaks. Now, another solid counter that I find very successful is Star-Lord. While Ultron is ulting, just pop your Star-Lord ult and you easily shred down the Ultron. But you have to remember that Ultron gets his ult extremely fast in a lot of scenarios, so you always have to be aware of when and how to use it. Because Ultron outranges a lot of the other heroes in the game, it's a little bit hard to really choose any other character to counter him besides, again, like I said, Hela, Black Widow. Characters that don't have damage fall off is typically what you're trying to go for. Besides that, mirroring the Ultron is the other best way to counter him. I find a lot of success in 1v1ing Ultrons. Me personally, if there's an Ultron on the enemy team, I go Ultron and easily shred him down. Now, I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but that's typically what you want to do. Those head scan characters either mirror or play Magneto the best way possible. But anyways, hopefully this video has helped you in any way, shape, or form of countering the new season of Marvel Rivals Season 2.5. And if you found it helpful in any way, shape, or form, do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. Subscribe if you're new. Going for 20,000 subscribers greatly helps out the channel. I hope you have a great and safe day, and I'll catch you in the next one.